My name is Vitu. I'm a 4B student in Math CA, and I'm pursuing management consulting after I graduate. So I chose Math CA because I wanted a program that combined a quantitative background along with some sort of technical business education, and I felt that Math CA was a great program that fits that bill. I did my first 2 co-op terms in audit at a large accounting firm, and after that I did 2 more co-op terms in consulting with the same firm. Over this period of 16 months I learned quite a bit about the professional services world, and I was lucky enough to find something that I was very interested in doing for the rest of my life. So after doing a bit of research, I discovered that I wanted to pursue a role that was a little bit more general businessy, and I found through my research online and through talking to several people in various industries that consulting fits that in a way that you're solving business problems using a variety of tools and a variety of knowledge. And I found that element of consulting very interesting, and it's something that you can't find in a lot of other industries. Consulting as a profession is helping business executives make decisions. This can be done in a variety of ways, through helping them realize that they actually had choices they didn't have, doing a lot of analysis that these companies can't do themselves to help them figure out what the best path is, or even bringing forth very new opportunities for the company to expand and to grow. As an analyst at a consulting firm, typically an undergraduate student would be driving a lot of the quantitative analysis, conducting a lot of research for the client, and putting all of that information together in a presentable way for the client, most typically through a PowerPoint presentation. I first discovered my interest in consulting during my 2B term. I just finished my first co-op term, and I was at a stage where I felt like I really needed to do some research before I figured out what I wanted to commit my life to. So I read a lot online, I found out what I was interested in, and once I found that interest, I pursued a lot of networking opportunities to try and meet individuals at the companies I would have liked to work for. Over the next 2 years, I tried to polish up my skills, add some elements to my resume that made it more consulting oriented. For example, doing roles that demonstrate an interest in consulting, and being in roles where you get to bring in a lot of personal impact to the organizations you're working on, and solve problems for individuals. So after getting that extracurricular experience and building some networks, I really took a lot of interest in preparing for the really tough interview process that happens in consulting. There is a very unique type of interview called the case interview, and various business schools and their student associations produce a lot of information on how to excel in these interviews. So I found all these resources online, did a lot of prep sessions with other SAF students who were pursuing similar goals or who had already pursued and succeeded in the school. And after that preparation, I ultimately landed a few interviews, and I was able to convert a couple of them into job offers. And I'm really grateful that I was able to do that, and while it did take a lot of hard work and dedication, I don't think I could have done it without the SAF community helping me. The case interview is a mechanism that consulting firms use to evaluate your quantitative abilities, your ability to break down very open-ended problems into smaller structured problems, and your ability to think creatively, all the while maintaining very strong communication skills and demonstrating your interest in problem solving. So what they would do is they would give you a very open-ended business problem. For example, a company that produces toys is experiencing a decline in profits. Why would they be experiencing this decline? So it's very open-ended, and what you would do as a candidate is you would take that very open-ended scenario, apply your own education and your own training to be able to to structure that and break it down into smaller components. For example, in the case of profitability, looking at revenues, looking at costs, looking at some of the drivers of each of those two elements, and walking through that problem with the interviewer to ultimately come up with a solution. Parts of it, you'll be also analyzing data, and one of your goals is to get that data by asking the right questions. And once you do receive this data, often it leads to a conclusion that you can make. So it's a very difficult process to prepare for, just because it's very unlike most other interviews, and the best way to prepare for it is by actually doing it with a peer or with somebody who's gone through the process before. I had a few extracurricular experiences that I would refer to in my applications. For one, I was involved with AFSA as the chair of the board of AFSA last year. I was also the co-chair of UAC in the past, and I was very involved in competitive debating when I was a younger student. I also managed to become the president of the Management Consulting Club. And I felt that all four of these experiences brought something different to the table when a company was screening my resume. I found that, for example, my debate brought out a competitive side, brought out the fact that I can communicate effectively. The AFSA side demonstrated my interest in student government and in student issues. When I was involved with UAC and with MCC, I got to demonstrate my ability to execute projects, and also I demonstrated my interest in consulting through joining the consulting club. What I would recommend for students is to find something that they're passionate about and really sign up for whatever extracurricular that may be that helps them make a personal impact. And often it's very easy to make a personal impact if you're very passionate about that cause. Also, it's very good, if you are interested in consulting, to demonstrate an interest in consulting-like endeavors. So joining a consulting club or joining an organization that performs consulting services for other clubs or other organizations such as ACE or Student Catalyst. And ultimately, getting some leadership skills as well, hopefully through working your way up in these organizations. And all those skills and experiences can definitely help you land a job like this. There are a couple of factors you want to consider when deciding whether you'd want to leave one job or forsake one opportunity for another one. The first one would be your own personal aversion to risk. If you were the type of person who, is concerned that, you're foregoing one opportunity that you think is very good, even though you may have the opportunity to get something else that you like a little bit more. If you're not comfortable with that risk, that's just a personal comfort situation, and for me, I found it very comfortable. I think there are a couple of other things that can influence your aversion to risk in this specific scenario. Firstly, is how well prepared you are for the recruiting process for this new endeavor. Ideally, you'd want to take these risks in a calculated way, and the best way to do this would be to take the risk only if you think you have a pretty decent shot at pursuing this new endeavor. The worst thing that can happen is you ending up with neither scenario working out. So the second thing that you'd have to look at is how much you liked the previous opportunity. In my case, I really wasn't a fan of what I was doing before, and it made it a little bit easier for me to make a switch and to take the risk of going into the free agent market, so to speak, and testing the waters out in full-time recruiting. And because I had that interest, and because I was very set on what I wanted to do, it made it a little bit easier for me to prepare for the process, because I kind of had that inclination. And if you have that inclination as well, and your heart's telling you to go a certain way, then just follow your heart. It's definitely a challenge to manage your time while you're considering full-time recruiting, your own academics, as well as any extracurriculars you're involved in. It was actually very challenging for me. I found it very stressful at times, and at times it was affecting how much sleep I was having and all of that. But the best way to manage it is to really keep a structure and keep things organized very well. Once I started putting everything in my Google Calendar, once I started making to-do lists and all of that to really manage everything that I need to do in all of my different buckets, it made it a little bit easier, because part of the stress is just you worrying that you're not getting everything done. So what I ended up doing was I made a list of all the companies I wanted to apply for, and I would take off the list as I would apply for those companies. And in the meantime, I would use the course syllabuses that I had provided to me by professors as a small checklist for what I needed to do to be on top of my courses. That being said, sometimes there is a bit of a trade-off that you'd have to think about when you're going through recruiting. For me, the trade-off was falling a little bit behind in school because I wanted to make sure that I landed the job that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. But that trade-off is different for everybody. And it's up to you, once again, based on your own personal comfort, to find where on that scale you fit and how much you'd be willing to trade off certain things for other things, because that's the only way you can keep staying. There are a wide variety of career prospects after consulting for an individual who's in the field, though the most common ones are probably business school, starting your own business, or working in business development or business strategy at a large company. Those are all trajectories that I've thought about as well. I'm hoping to do something a little bit less traditional. I'm a very big believer in giving back to the community, so I'm hopefully going to get involved in a business role doing education development. So ideally I would start my own company in that space, or I would work in government or for a non-government organization in that space and apply my business learnings to solve the social issue. While professional designations like the CA and the CFA are very valued in certain industries, consulting's recruiting process is very unique. A lot of consulting firms hire individuals from a variety of backgrounds, including doctors, lawyers, political science graduates, accounting students like myself. I actually have a friend who did a master's in war studies, and she's joining McKinsey in a couple of months. But whatever professional expertise and experience you would get from doing a designation like the CFA or the CA, it demonstrates that you have the ability to succeed in an industry like that. However, the actual expertise and skills are a little bit different from the skills that are used on a day-to-day basis in consulting. So while it is very valuable to be able to show that you can do things at a very high level in whatever industry you're in, expectation is a little bit different with regards to the skills and knowledge you bring to consulting as opposed to other industries. There are several key skills to focus on for students who are very interested in pursuing consulting full-time. The first would be quantitative skills. They evaluate that quite heavily in the case interview process, and consulting firms like individuals who have the ability to perform quantitative analysis. The second would be communication skills, because in an environment like consulting where you're interacting with clients on a day-to-day basis, being able to communicate effectively is very important. The third would be problem-solving skills and the ability to take very complex problems and break them down and solve them. That is the nature of the work, and at one point or another you're going to be solving problems for a client, so being able to demonstrate that you can do it effectively through extracurriculars or through other things that you do is very effective. And the fourth would be an interest in general business and or consulting as a profession. So for me, I was just very interested in corporate strategy and thinking about how companies make decisions that they do and what kind of things drive them to pursue whatever strategies they do. To best prepare yourself for the recruiting process, the University of Waterloo and SAF has several resources that you can use. The first would be resources on case interview preparation. SAF has actually paid licensing fees for the Vault's case interview guide, so you can actually find that on my SAF community on Learn. You can also find some case interview prep resources on CECA's website if you log in with your profile. But on top of that, the best resource, I would say, in my opinion, is the actual community of students. There are a lot of students at our school who have pursued consulting roles in a co-op term or pursued business strategy roles in a co-op term. And being able to talk to these individuals, hear about the recruiting process, hear about how they perform in the interviews, and learn from them what kind of skills are required and how to attain those skills is very valuable. And having that support helped me, and I think it's probably the most valuable thing for anybody else interested in consulting. My advice to students would be to start thinking about what you want to do in the long term as soon as possible. You'll find that very different career trajectories are required to pursue various career goals. For example, in finance, it's very good to have finance experience, and a lot of individuals who succeed in the recruiting process move from the back office to the middle office and then to the front office. In consulting, a lot of recruiters value a diversity of experiences and a diversity of fields. And in accounting, it's a very technical, specialized field, so having specifically accounting experience or tax experience is a valuable asset. So knowing that there are differences in these three types of recruiting processes, it's very important for you to figure out which one of these three you'd want to pursue the most, or if there's something outside of these three that you want to pursue, and figuring out how you can best prepare yourself to end up in that position. After consulting, there are a lot of possibilities for what you can do with your life and what you can do with your life. I'm gonna start that again. Wait, what is happening? Am I clearing the air about the CFA, or about professional designations in general, or about?
You can talk about professional designations in general and then focus on the CFA.
Okay. Alright. The best advice I can give to students is to do research as soon as possible on what you want to do full time. You'll find that various career goals have vastly different. So, I keep on starting everything with.